Welcome to Bengali Girl. This is your podcast host Nikita, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I think this has become a trend, but before I begin this episode, I would like to extend my gratitude to everyone who's listening, downloading, sharing, and leaving reviews or rating this podcast, because when I first started this, I honestly thought that my only audience would be my husband and a couple of friends who I would have emotionally blackmailed to listen to this. But I'm so grateful for your support. We are currently sitting at 200 plus downloads for this podcast, and according to Apple Podcasts, we are ranked in the top 150 in the UK and top 100 in the UAE. And I can't even believe that I'm talking about rankings. Also, if you might realize, and if you've listened to the previous episodes, my audio is a bit different. That's because my best friend Yasin has gotten out of his way and gifted me a very professional mic. You might be able to see this mic on my Instagram page where I'm doing snippets of my, podcast. So please follow that. I would love you to support me through my Instagram page as well, that I created specifically for this podcast. The Instagram handle is Bengali Girl by NTK. And just a side note, unfortunately, Spotify does not have podcasts for their Bangladeshi audience living in Bangladesh. So my best tip for the people back at home is to download apps such as Castbox or any other podcast application to listen to this. I know that quite a few people had messaged me about this, so that is why I thought it would be best to announce it here as well. Right now, let's begin this episode. Honestly, when I was thinking about the stuff that I wanted to share on this podcast episode, I was very skeptical because I wasn't sure how to navigate and avoid any further complications, because I will be talking about quite a few, or specifically one of the raw experiences as a Bengali girl navigating this twisted world. But take it with a pinch of salt or a cup of tea, because here we go. Now, a bit of a background of how I would connect with people prior to 2016. I would connect with, if I connected with you on a level, I would consider you part of my friend group, and I would genuinely think that you would have my best interest for me. I suppose this naiveness comes from the fact that most of my friends were either people that I grew up with or went to school with. Now at uni in Dubai, I would say I kept a general friendship with everyone, and other than a few people, I didn't really get deep into friendships with anyone else, because I was reaching that stage in my life where I realized that I could not keep up with so many people in my life and make it a qualitative friendship. And I had to do sort of an opportunity cost, I guess. But the story that I'm going to talk about is when I had transferred university from the Dubai campus to the one in Australia. So, coming to a land where I did not have a single family or friend. More on that in our coming episodes. But, I was kind of forced to make friendships from scratch. It was very challenging because the people that, I'm meeting here, there was nothing that we shared in sort of experiences or cultural experiences as well, because growing up in Dubai, even though you're Bangladeshi, I feel like there are some very distinct cultural differences. We kind of immigrants living anywhere, we kind of adapt a little bit and adopt the culture of where we're living and their nuances and everything. So I guess it was always a bit of a challenge to make friends here, when you're still trying to battle homesickness at the same time. But I managed to make some friends. Most of them belonged to this one circle, because they all were Bengali kids who kind of knew each other or knew of each other because they went to the same school or they lived in the same area, etc. I mean, we all know how small Bangladesh is, right? Everyone ends up knowing everyone somehow. And please do not judge me for the name changes. I honestly had a very, very hard time coming up with names to replace the original ones. This experience that I'm going to share kind of broke me, but taught me quite a lot about, preserving my energy and my efforts. This group of friends that I'm talking about, these were Bengali kids, and we tried to be a tight-knit society in a way where we did everything together. Like even between classes we would meet up and chill. And now when I think of that, definitely wasn't the right or healthy choice to do that. Instead of making other new friends and actually experiencing uni life, but I guess it was a comfortable choice at that time. And I always felt a bit of an outcast among these people because, as I said before, they would have like shared experiences or stories that they could talk about, but my experiences living in UAE wasn't as daring or as fun or spontaneous, and they were so different, but I guess it just wasn't entertaining enough for them. Now somewhere in the first 5 months or so, I could sense that there was sort of like an awkwardness in the air when we would all hang out. There were these shared looks or way too obvious ignorance that kept happening whenever I walked in the room or like spoke about something. A side note is that the group of friends that I'm talking about were majority guys, and it felt like there was some prejudice against girls, and their conversations felt like heavily influenced by what they saw in movies or like television shows. And basically they thought like girls that were shown in the movies were just like how they're in real life, like they really can't be friends with each other, and all we love to do is like gossip, like as if there's no depth in us other than all of whatever I mentioned. Now, my way of showing love or that I care about you as a friend is to do acts of service. That is just how my love language is. And so I would kind of help in keeping their house clean in a way, which might sound bad, right? But most of them lived in the same house. So like V, Po, and Gus, like mind you, the names are definitely changed, but let's just call them V, Po, and Gus. And we all always hung out at their house, so it kind of felt like if I'm helping them in any way, it's me appreciating the fact that they opened up their house to us. Now comes the sad part, or now let me tell you of the day where I guess I was completely shattered. This was prior to Eid. We had decided that we would be doing breakfast at Ray's house, lunch at V's house, like V, Po, and Gus, like lunch at their house, and dinner at mine. So 2 or 3 days before Eid, V messages in the group chat that we all had saying that, hey, I've been really busy and just don't feel like hosting a lunch. So after breakfast, let's just go back and then, meet up for dinner at Nikita's. And I thought, great, this gives me more time to prep for dinner and actually make it like an experience. I mean, people who know me know I can go extra when it comes to like hosting. So I was very happy that I had a lot of time in my hand. But, we met up on Eid's day, and even though I could sense this whole awkwardness in the air and how they all became like quiet when I was around, I thought that I'm going to like avoid or pretend that all of this didn't exist, because it was my first Eid away from home and I was so homesick. So I was clinging on to anything that felt like a good vibe. So after breakfast, they all went back home, and I went to the supermarket to grab a few things that I needed. Like while at the market, I did realize that 2 of my cooking utensils were at V, Po, and Gus's house. So what I did was I finished shopping, and then I was driving, I was approaching the house with my car, and I noticed that V, Po, Gus, and everyone else that was there in the breakfast were now in their own respective cars, and they were going out for a drive. They were kind of getting out of the driveway and they drove past me, and I'm pretty sure they all saw my car. I mean, it's hard to miss on the road when it was only my car on that road. And it was weird because we would do everything together, or even if we didn't, they would message asking who's free or something. Or I'm so sure that to coordinate this many people to go out on a drive together, like it would have taken some effort, which struck me as weird because I wasn't involved in this and I don't know why. But I went home and I cried as one would, and I was confused why I was being treated this way. So a friend of mine spoke to them on my behalf because I was just so angry at the time, and the way I handle my anger is I become really quiet and I'm just processing my anger before I say anything, because I know what it feels when you're angry and you say stuff that you don't really mean. So I was like, I'm not going to talk to them, and I made a friend speak to them on my behalf. And I'm pretty sure there were other things that was said about me, but one of the only things that actually got conveyed to me is that I did not say thank you or sorry enough. Yeah, let that sink in. Now, I'm definitely not that person who believes that, in friendship you don't say sorry or thank you. Definitely not that person. But I guess I didn't say it according to how they wanted to hear it. This whole experience made me realize that I was too naive when it came to trusting and including people in my life. And it definitely made me realize that there are crazier people than me. But also that, in a way, God saved me from further turmoil, because these people genuinely did not care about me. Even though, in the back of my mind, I knew that, I kind of turned a blind eye because I was alone and I thought I needed friends. This is, again, what I learned in recent years, is that you don't need people to stop feeling lonely. You can be surrounded by thousands of these so-called friends, or even people that you call friends, but yet still feel lonely. I think, and I strongly believe, that rather than the quantity, it is the quality that you should surround yourself with. Because I have friends like Turulia or my other best friend Yusrat, who are miles away, but they can still make me feel loved and supported. Yet I would have friends here who say that they care, but yet they would choose to turn a blind eye when it's convenient for them. And this is not throwing shade at anyone, because I understand how busy we get with our lives, but it's just saying that, do not surround yourself or have friends just to fill that loneliness in your life. And as Bengali girls or Desi girls, I find, or we often find it difficult to draw boundaries around us, because in the Desi culture there is no such thing as boundaries. This was such a difficult step for me to implement in my life, and for the people around me to accept it, because the reason I drew boundaries was because I didn't want what had happened earlier, but I also didn't want to waste my energy for every soul that I meet. I started to enjoy my own company in a way, because when I'm alone or truly alone and in conversation with myself, I tend to have a much more constructive conversation than I do with most people that I meet on a daily basis. Now, in these conversations with myself, I tend to talk from both sides, where I'm talking from different perspectives, and it might sound crazy to you, but it's actually very healthy to check in on yourself and see how you're feeling or tracking with events happening in your life. Trust me, if you haven't tried this, try it once. But coming back to boundaries, this is funny that I'm using this example, but culturally or historically, us Desi people always had a difficult time drawing boundaries anyways, because we followed a white man's illustration of what partition should look like. So it's not only natural for us to not know what boundaries are and how to respect a person's boundaries. If we were talking about that, I would say that my boundaries are the reasons people would think I'm a bit of a snob, because I don't like to indulge in social outings too often, because I believe in the concept of a social battery. And my other boundary would be that if I don't align with you, or our growth or perspectives and how life should be led don't match, I will tend to have an amicable relationship, but I would not actively seek out for your company, because I strongly believe that everyone is on their own journey of self-realization, and I do not want to be preached or become a preacher myself. We all have enough on our plate I guess, to not feel pressured to live life in a way that everyone else is living. And I feel like we all have become adults or are becoming adults that in our own way. We shouldn't be following examples of or try to follow examples of 1,000 people. I would definitely have like a role model, and then I would try to depict or inspire my life from there. But to have so many role models, you're definitely going to get lost. Nowadays, you have your modern day friendships where you don't really have conversations daily, but you know that this person, if and when they approach you, you will always have like a great conversation. And I love that. I feel like I'm such a girl's girl because I love and value female friendships so much. There is just something about how emotive we are in our conversations, or how in depth our conversations can go to, that just connects with me in a different way. And I just value my girl friendships so much because in the movies and in the television shows, they tell you that, oh, girls can't be friends, girls love to gossip. I think it's human nature to gossip, so that's out of the window. It's not just girls who love to gossip, but I strongly feel like, because we have so many cultural experiences, you can call that trauma if you want. I mean, we had so many limitations on our mobility or our freedom, and then we have so many expectations when it comes to not only like family or domestic, but also trying to break the glass ceiling that's put on Desi women, that's way lower than what's put on normal, a white woman, I would say, and trying to break that. And when you have like a strong girl group that you can go to, like, that is so inspiring. And I am so lucky to have these set of girlfriends that I can always fall back to when I need that kind of a support. I just love friendships in a way. And that's such a drastic turn in this podcast, right? So it started with this story of me feeling sad and heartbroken about these people, but ending up with really being grateful of what I have in my life. And as I said, I think I did mention this, but my therapist had recommended that. So when you start a conversation, maybe it can be with yourself or like with anyone, and you start talking about too much negative, it's time to like switch and then start talking a bit of a positive, because you don't want to get into that whole mindset. Your brain is a muscle, so you don't want to train it to always fall back into the negative thoughts. But yeah, let me know what friendship experiences changed you, so that I can also learn something from you, But thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I am again very grateful that you're here. A little bit about episode 5. It's going to be Bengali Girls version about Bhoot FM 2.0. I mean, what is a podcast hosted by a Bangladeshi person, and there is no episode on Jeen, Bhoot and all of that. So come on, bring your Zamzam water to the next episode if you feel scared, and prep your Ayatul Kursis and everything. So I'll see you, or you'll hear me then. Bye.